Hey guys, and welcome to Actual Fluency Podcast number 130. Today I'm continuing the conversation I had started last week with Dave Prine. And in case you haven't listened to part one, I highly recommend you go listen to it. So check out your podcast player for the previous episode or go to actualfluency.com/129 so you can listen to the first part of this rather long conversation about existentialism in polyglottism, whatever that means. It's basically an episode about being like, what do you really want from language learning? Is it okay to dabble around in languages? How should you react to maybe having too ambitious goals? Stop comparing yourself to others and other really cool things that Dave helped me see that I had a pretty bad mindset about. Don't forget to go to tryglossica.com to give Glossica, the show sponsor, a try and let me know what you think of them. I'll be sure to forward your comments to Mike and the team. And otherwise, enjoy this episode with Dave Prine.
It's such a warm crowd, and I think that people
Yeah.
who are afraid of the crowd really need to go. And we constantly put out there that you don't need to speak multiple languages. You just need to have an interest. I think my I gave a talk at the gathering this year, and I think my tag at the end was, "It's not about how many languages you speak; it's about how many languages you love."
Hmm.
And the gathering just put out a trailer of the gathering this year. And if you go to the Polyglot Gathering Facebook page, you can see it there. And there's a disturbing part that I'm in, which is really really kind of embarrassing. So you have to watch that. But they do say you don't need to speak a lot of languages. Just go have fun, and they make it look like a party. There are people dancing and singing, and people giving lectures, and other people asking thoughtful questions. And it's really just, it's a neat little, maybe like a minute and a half trailer that is really, it's very positive, again, except for the part where you have this one guy that's kind of standing alone looking confused. So
Well, hey,
yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about that. I remember your talk from last year, which was a memorable one about. Is it pronounced quiche or how do you pronounce it?
Kiche, Maya Kiche. Yeah.
Quiche. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, the um, the endangered language, which we can talk about in just a second, but that was I went to the talk just to sort of support you because we've been hanging out and we had this, as you said, drinking group. Let's just call it what it is. Meeting every night, at the pub and drinking €1 liters of beer. Um, so I just kind of went to support. I generally only go to, well, not only, but I generally go to the talks of the people I know, and then I usually just socialize 90% of the time. And I don't like being stuck in like a classroom when I could be talking to a lot of interesting people in the halls. But occasionally my friends do have talks, so I go to them, and I went to yours, and I was like, well, I don't really know about this Kichi thing. I never heard of it. What is it? It sounds weird. But you put on a fantastic presentation that was really funny, and the time just flew by. Even though I would say back then, and I would probably still say it doesn't really interest me that much. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you got so involved with endangered languages and why it means so much to you. But for me, the fact that you could take a subject which I wasn't interested in, still not that interested in, and make it really funny and interesting, it was a really kudos to your presentation skills. So I can only imagine this year's presentation being a success as well.
Oh, thank you. Actually, last year was my first public presentation, and I have to say, I really hate public speaking, but I think I can get away with it. But thank you for saying that, because I thought it was very rough and choppy and whatnot, but it was well received. And I did a talk this year on a language called Tunica. And it's been great getting into these endangered language talks, because people have been like reaching out and saying, "Hey, I saw your talk about Tunica or Quiche." And Lindsay Williams, she went to my talk as well, and she ended up doing a language story on her website about Quiche, and she interviewed me as well, and I had to be shown on Skype, and it was a bad situation for all of us. So, but anyway, back to your original question, endangered languages. I became a polyglot wannabe first, even before all this community stuff even before the internet. I lived abroad for a year in Germany and found that if you travel around a little bit, you can, and 10 or 15 words in a different language, especially if you're an American in Hungary and you speak any Hungarian, people will give you a car or buy you a house. I mean, it's really amazing the results from just saying thank you and please in other languages. But so anyway, so over the years, I'd collected languages for fun and just studied bits and pieces. And I went to a talk about documenting a Tashelhit Berber, a language spoken in Morocco, and that was declining. And just the idea of documenting a language sounded really fun. And then hearing about languages that, they might lose all their speakers. This language might no longer exist. And I thought, oh my God, this language could die before I can learn 10 to 15 words in it. We have to save them all. And it kind of blossomed into this this desire to really kind of stem the tide of colonialism and majority languages. And I'm not saying like English or Spanish or Portuguese or French are bad per se, but it's just that there seems to be a huge imbalance, and especially when languages are kind of thrust aside due to force or even like nature, even like natural disasters. Say a small tribe that speaks a language gets wiped out because of an earthquake, and now there are only two speakers left. It's like, what do you do? And there are limits to what you can really do to bring it back. But I just thought if there are ways to work with communities and help perpetuate their language, help show that, hey, your language is important to, your community, to science, to just the well-being of the soul of the planet, which I believe, and so whatever I can do to kind of help that. And, it's like loving, eating candy all day and getting to work at a candy shop and getting to work with the candy and sample it and maybe change recipes and all that. So it's kind of like that. I love languages. If I can work with a language, learn it, learn about it, but then also help it stick around for a while. I don't know. It just suddenly it kicked in that, God, this is what I am on this planet to do. So I warned you about long answers to your questions.
Well, that's good. They're good answers. I'll give you that. So, I mean, it's hard for me to find Russian speakers. So, how do you overcome those challenges when you stumble on a new endangered language that you want to look into and pursue?
Oh, that's a good question because endangered languages, minority languages, underrepresented languages, all of that kind of overlap in my brain. But generally, I go for languages that do have something that I can learn from, and I don't really interact with speakers all that much. I kind of learn on my own, and then I say things out loud on my own. But usually, I try and get some kind of audio. Like Manx is a language that's coming back, and the efforts put into it are just amazing. I met Adrian Kane, the language commissioner for the Isle of Man, and he's done like these podcasts and videos and recordings and stuff. So there's a lot of audio, even if it's not like a native speaker, because it died out temporarily. It's still a great resource. So I'll learn from that. There's a Native American language called Lakota, which I just bought 4 textbooks and 4 audio CDs, and that's a great resource because you have all this information in front of you. Again, there are speakers, but I don't interact with them. The Navajo Nation dubbed Star Wars into Navajo, and I got to be a part of that. I got to lend a voice to the movie, and I also have a copy of the DVD now, so I can listen to that and train my ear for Navajo. So it really varies. There's some languages that just there's nothing written down, there's nothing recorded, so there's nothing I can really learn. So then that turns into a possible project. Is this a language that I could actually go to the location and document it, create a dictionary, and this is not something you can do overnight or in a week or a year. It would be like a lifelong commitment, but that is ultimately where I'd like to go. So hopefully, maybe a decade from now, when the podcast is still going, you and I will meet again, and we will talk about what I've done with whatever endangered language I've chosen by then.
Yeah, well, I just warning you, you'll have to get some significant work done to Trump having a line in the Star Wars movie, just saying.
No, no, best day ever. That is like that is. I mean, I endangered languages and Star Wars, like the best of all possible worlds. I truly like if I died tomorrow, I think I would still die a happy man. It was such a great experience, and just and it's again, it looks great on a CV of sorts, and yeah, it's just, it's really prompted um, other people thinking about doing similar things with similar movies, dubbing, subtitling, and there's now this huge wave of digitization of media with indigenous languages. And I went to there's a language documentation workshop called Colang, and they throw it every 2 years. It's 2 weeks long, and I went to that this year, and you can take different classes. You can take one on orthography, like creating a written system for a language, or learn about archiving, or learn about how to use certain types of software. And there's one class that I did not sit in on, which I'm a little bummed about. But they talk about digitization using indigenous languages, and so they had people. They actually showed a clip of the Navajo Star Wars, and then they also showed less professional methods, like people dubbing and subtitling other movies, just crowdsourced, just kind of amateur, but still decent. And it's great. You see these people doing it with cartoons and movies and other bits of popular culture, and it's starting to kind of gain momentum. And so I really hope that in the future more popular movies will actually have this professionally applied to them. I think it would be a great way to kind of give minority communities a boost.
Yeah, and with the fact that you can now release films entirely digitally will be a big help to producing those kind of extra audio tracks. Where in the past you'd have to actually produce physical copies, you'd have to actually have like reels and stuff. Now you can just have it all as files, and the costs are significantly less, and the upside might be huge for certain communities and certain languages. I'm still confused why my Netflix doesn't have like every European language in it and subtitles in every language on the planet, but maybe some person can tell me why that is.
Yeah, I find that a shame because I do a lot of streaming, for movies here too. But I will tell you, I and do not tell my partner this because she doesn't need to know. But I gutted my basement a few months ago, and I discovered that I have over 700. No, I'm sorry, not 700. I have seven like bankers boxes full of DVDs, which translates to I think about maybe 500 DVDs. And what happened was they're not just movies I went to the store and bought. They're movies that I found in Europe. I found these DVDs either in Europe or I bought them online, but they are European versions of American movies like Star Wars, Harry Potter, I forget like Armageddon and Hugh Grant movies and action movies and comedies, all sorts of things. And they're subtitled or dubbed in so many different languages. And I just find American produced DVDs only have Spanish and French and maybe like Korean or Portuguese once in a while, but mostly Spanish and French. German versions of like A Few Good Men. That was the first DVD I ever saw in Turkey. And I picked it up and I looked on the back and it was subtitled in like 12
Hmm.
languages. And I wet my pants. It was the best thing in the world. And so over the years, I've bought all these DVDs and I'm actually using them for a language challenge, to watch these things with the subtitles or with the audio and just really get use out of them because they're so useful. You had mentioned in the beginning about subtitles and using movies to learn from. And I know people say, oh, you can't learn a language from DVDs. You can't, maybe, but they certainly help a lot. And you can get a lot of vocabulary from the subtitles. You
Yep.
can train your ear. It won't immediately make you perfect at conversation, but oh my God, there's so much that you can learn from DVDs. And I have tons of this. So I'm excited to start using them again once I find time to study languages, which as we've discussed, will never ever happen.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? But I do love DVDs as well. I love the bonus materials a little bit more than the language selection, though. But that's something that I think the movie industry is not really taking advantage of that much. Like, you can stream a movie online, but can you stream a movie with all the bonus features? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Sometimes, maybe.
yeah, I think there is one streaming service where you can buy the movie or rent it, or you can buy or rent it with bonus features, and that's
Well,
I
that's
think
a
all we
scam,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, we did that with Elf, with that movie Elf with Will Ferrell, where we watched, we I think bought it. We didn't have it for Christmas, so we bought it for Christmas and we watched it. And then there was, I think, like an hour of bonus features, but they weren't all that engaging. And I think it was because you had to watch everything linearly or fast
Mm.
forward back and forth. You couldn't just skip to the thing you
Oh,
wanted. So
that's true. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm old fashioned. I find a lot of streaming and digital stuff just not really as gratifying as having, say, the hard copy, the physical DVD or physical flash cards. But I'm old. I'll be dead soon. You young kids, you go on with your digital stuff.
Well, it's definitely improving language learning in many ways, but yeah, I'm a bit annoyed with the Netflix thing because and it's weird. This I'm watching Suits in the minute, which I really love. It's a good show. But one episode had French subtitles, and then the next one didn't. And I was like, well, how does that work? It's in the same season. Did they fire the French translator halfway through, or is it some licensing thing? If there's anything that's archaic in our world, it's the way licensing works. Like the fact that you have, I don't know, CNN posting a video report on their website about trees falling over in Arkansas, and it says like, "Oh, sorry, it seems like you're in the UK. Due to licensing, we cannot show you this content." I'm like, "This isn't Star Wars, This isn't like a movie. This
It's
is a
not Disney, yeah.
it's so stupid. Like I don't get it. It's like I understand protecting like intellectual property and stuff, like series and movies and video games and that stuff. But the videos that they block are stupid. Or you go on YouTube and it's like it's a public video, except in Belgium. It's
Yeah.
like what? What does that even mean? Like how does that work? Did Belgium not pay to have the movie, or anyway, I'm ranting about it. It's just always annoyed me how bad that system is, and that you need a VPN. Like you need to spoof where you're from to watch news at 9 from I don't know, the local station. Whatever. But
Yeah, yeah,
anyway,
yeah. You hear that, Belgium? We're coming for
yeah.
you.
Well, it's not really a country, anyways. So it's. I didn't say that. Just. But one thing, just before we wrap up here, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the new podcast that you started because, I have a little podcast of my own here. So, what got you and Rick to start a podcast? By the way, a big fan of Rick as well. I think he's a really nice guy. So you found a good partner there for teaming up. What's your podcast about? What's it called? Where can people find more about it?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's just a little thing we've started. We've got one episode out. I actually have to put episode 2 up today. Rick will probably yell at me if I don't put it up, but I hate him. He's a good guy, but I hate him. He bugs me. He's weird. He smells like cheese, and not in a good way. It's just no. Rick is a good guy. He and we are doing the lollygagging podcast. One day he and I were chatting, and he said, "You know what? There are all these things out there. Let's do something." And we just like to talk about languages, so we just like to lollygag, so to speak. So that became the title. And if you go to polyglottsanonymous.com, there will be a link at the top that will send you to the lollygagging podcast. And I need to do some research to have this subscribable, because my blog is from the 1930s. But so I think I'll probably go with Anchor, because a dear friend suggested that to me not too long ago.
Yeah, not sponsored, but they are a good service. They're good guys. I can rant about stuff as well here, if you want me to add stuff. So Anchor, I think, is basically a great movement. They're making something that used to be quite complicated. They're making it very easy, and it's free as well. Obviously, they have a long game plan of monetizing through probably ads and stuff. But they had this great new feature, and because I had quite a lot of downloads on the platform, they sent me like an email saying, "Hey, would you be interested in trying this new feature out?" And I was like, "Wow, that sounds interesting. I'm in." And they sent an NDA over, by the way.
Oh,
So I actually signed it, so I can't say what the thing was.
okay.
But after I signed the NDA and sent them back to Anchor, I I got the proposal, the feature, and it said at the bottom, like, by the way, if you're not from the US, you can't do this. I'm like, what the
Oh.
Listen, first of all, if I can't use it if I'm not American, why didn't you ask me in the first place? That's one thing. And second, why is every technology, every new thing US only? There's so many things where you think like, why can't we do it because we're in Europe, you know? And I just think that it's a shame that we have this global community, we have the internet and technology, yet companies set up these barriers, these borders that are not really needed. I mean, their excuse was the technology that we use only works in the US. I'm like, what? What does that even mean? And basically, this goes back to my rant against streaming services. Is that, for instance, Netflix, has different content based on where you are in the world. So they
Yeah.
have different agreements with Denmark as they have with the UK. But you can change it with a VPN. So if you pretend to be from somewhere else, oops, you get the new catalog. So some people somewhere are misunderstanding how the internet works. And they think that all Americans are on their internet and all Danish people are on their internet. And it just really annoys me that they're not taking advantage of, like, go and tell, let's say, Coca-Cola or whatever. Oh, by the way, we have this movie. We can get it in front of all Americans. You pay us 10 million. Or we can get in front of 7 billion people and you pay us, double. What's not to like? I don't get it. Tell me, Dave. Tell me.
I don't know. I don't quite get it. I mean, other than just that is the policy of I think China is an extreme example where they limit their information coming in. Um, and so if you go to China, you will have a hard time using like Google Maps. I think you can still access it to some extent, but you can't. It definitely limits what comes in. But I don't know why like America and UK and that scarby skag of Belgium. I don't know why there are limitations, but I guess yeah, I don't know. It's a higher power,
Yeah. Do you know what
and
they
they
do you know what they track in Google Maps though? It's quite scary.
my basement.
No, everything.
Oh, oh,
Also, Google tracks everything, but that's a different story. But I
well, yeah.
under the freedom of information, you can actually request Google for everything they have on you. And somebody did that, and I think he got like 40 pages of content, or maybe more. It was like huge. And basically, for instance, Google Maps, in case people don't know, it tracks wherever you go. So if you go to Google Maps, you can actually see your history. So I was able to see my exact route I took in 2015 when I was in New York, for instance.
Oh,
It
awesome.
it showed on the street level what I did that day, where I went, who I went to see, where and how. And I mean, I don't really care about this because I feel like my boring personal life and privacy is less important than actually securing the world against actual threats. So for me, I'd rather take 15 minutes to get through security in the airport and let them show my balls, so to speak, than having terrorist attacks and whatnot. But it is pretty scary, and with the advertising, Google stores your search history, what you click on, what you don't click on, what you like, what you don't like, and they just know so much about you. So maybe China is doing a reasonable thing to stand back on some of it, but it would obviously be nice if they could be part of the global internet as well. But we are giving these companies a lot of power, the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, and there's really no regulation for them because they're private companies. So it is kind of a danger zone that has to be balanced very carefully.
Oh, definitely, definitely. But I agree that there's very little that I do that I think would show up on anyone's radar. So I'm not as concerned. But yeah, in principle, I mean, it is kind of a sketchy thing, and the idea of it is a little unsavory. So, but yeah, no, I agree.
It's well, yeah. I guess it's better to have relevant ads than seeing ads for I don't know wedding packages all the time or something something else. So it's the price we pay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway,
So anyway, speaking of
yeah.
languages,
Speaking of languages, oh yeah, what were we saying? We're gonna stop speaking any languages but English, and the podcast is over. And no,
yeah, and languages are for stupid heads, and
suckers.
yeah. So no, yeah. So and actually, it's funny because when we were talking about the podcast, and I find that I like doing it with Rick. He's in England. I'm over here, and we get to share perspectives. And but it's a little hard because we're coming in kind of late in the game, where all these other people are have done things and established their place in the community. So who knows if this will make a dent or if it's just something fun to do. But it really, I mean, like the language learning world has changed a lot since the polyglot community started building. I mean, there's so much more technology, so much more internet access, and apps and websites and methods and whatnot.
Podcasts.
Podcasts, yeah. And I mean, you've been doing this for a while, so you've kind of been doing it over the range of time that this has been going on. So, and you said that like you're feeling changes coming up with your life as well as with the community. So I'm really interested to see where this will go. I'm wondering if the polyglot community will sort of reach a critical mass and then implode, or if this will be an ongoing thing. People will still get to do it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think that in some ways the market is oversaturated with people, touting methods and resources and everything, and things are starting to level off a little bit. I find that advice is about the same here as it is there. People have these great, amazing methods, and here buy my work plan for learning a language
Yeah.
for $45, and then it's just a sheet filled with blanks. Like what language is important to you? Oh, French. It's like, how many hours can you spend learning French a week? 3. Go learn French for 3 hours a week. And it's like, wait, that was it. So,
Yeah.
I find a lot of these methods that are just kind of generic, I guess.
For
So,
sure. Yeah, I
yeah.
think the value is really in guided methods, or in, for instance, I think one of the best products that I know is Baselang, which is for an unlimited Spanish tutoring service. So you actually get as many lessons as you want for a fixed fee. For me, that's like the ultimate value. But then you have courses that teach you how to learn, which is I go back and forth on this. I think that you don't need it, but on the other hand, if I wanted to learn a language and I came into the community 5 years ago and I didn't know anyone and I had, money to burn anyway, would it be worth my while to buy, let's say, Benny Lewis's program and sort of supercharge basically get all his mistakes up front, all the kind of do's and don'ts? Would that be worth it for me if money was not an objection and I just wanted to kind of skip the mistakes that everyone does if they don't know about them? So to me, it's kind of like I do see where you're coming from as well. I do see a lot of the same stuff being thrown around, and there are a lot of podcasts as well. But at the end of the day, I think it's because it's just a very popular theme. There's just a lot of people interested. It's the same as losing weight. Like, how many ways can you actually lose weight? How many diets can people come up with? When at the end of the day, losing weight is just eating less and exercising more. And language learning, I feel, is a perfect analogy because it's basically just like learn words, speak with people, you're fine. So yeah, I see it for sure, definitely, and that's also the part of the reason that I've been thinking about stepping down with the podcast. And I've had long breaks on the podcast before, as many listeners will be aware, for various reasons. Sometimes it's been due to life reasons, and sometimes it's been more like a motivational issue, just not sure where to go with the podcast. But I think it's a bit like I kind of have explored the topic now. And whilst I do enjoy listening to the stories of the people come on, I mean, that's basically the only reason I do it these days. I do feel like it's kind of the same things being said over and over in different ways. And sometimes people say something interesting, like today you kind of challenged me a little bit on this imposter syndrome thing, which I don't get to talk to very often, so that was very cool. But we also talked about very simple things that have been on the podcast numerous times. And it's not that I don't think people get value out of repetition, but at some point I think it's just time to maybe free up some time to do other things, or just kind of move on from the project. But I think I want to hear from people as well. Like, if you're listening to this, this is the tail end of a rather long episode. I just checked the timer. So I imagine we lost about half the people, or three-quarters of the people by now. Just that's how it works in podcasting. But if anyone's listening and you want to give some feedback as to my thoughts on this, I'd love to hear them, because at the end of the day, I the only reason to do this podcast is for the listeners. In the beginning there might have been some personal agenda on actually how to figure out how to do this stuff, like asking someone like Benny or Richard, why did you do that? Why didn't you do this? That was very useful in the beginning for me personally, but I've done it all. I've interviewed so many people now that I've heard every variation there is. So for now, it's basically just, what do people get out of it? And if people get back to me like you did early in the episode and say you really like it and you get this and this out of it, and you don't feel like I'm doing misrepresenting myself or anything, then I'll be much more inclined to continue, of course. But if I don't really hear anything, I can only assume that it's because it's not really doing it for people anymore. I got way more messages in the past, but it could be due to regularity of the episodes. I used to publish like an episode a week, every week, but these days there's a little bit of a delay depending on the guests and what's going on, where I am, if I'm traveling or anything. So maybe that has something to do with it, but I just don't really feel like the excitement is the same. So if that's kind of dying out as well, maybe it's better to just call it a game, and say, we did a lot of good things, and I've helped a lot of people. I know this for sure. I've helped myself a lot as well. But it's not worth it to just kind of drag it on just to drag it on. I want to have my heart in it as well.
Oh, definitely, and you have to. And I think in the beginning, everything was new, and you were learning a lot, and you were getting a lot of the the bigger names and first founders on there. And I listened to a number of your podcasts once I heard about you. I listened to like a string of them in a row, and just enjoyed hearing from different people and hearing different stories, and just getting more information about them, about you. But I think I think it's sort of the law of diminishing returns, and so now you've got to spend more time kind of mining for new information and new tips and techniques and stories, and they're out there. And going to these events is nice because you do see the old drinking buddies and the first founding polyglots and everything, but you also meet these new people, these young people and fresh people who are just starting out or just starting up their own website or blog or whatever. And especially at Langfest, the first one I went to, which was actually called the North American
Oh yeah, I was there.
Polyglot Symposium. Yeah, you were there, and I met you again there, and and there are all these people I'd never heard of before who were kind of getting established, and I thought, oh, this is great. This is all these talks were being given by really young people,
Yeah.
and I thought this is great. And they had like I think high school students giving a talk, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is great that it's not just a generational thing. This is something that will move on to a new crowd, and that will be ultimately the people that you may want to check in with next.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I was never in doubt of. That there'll always be people like yourself who have interesting stories, who have interesting perspectives, who have done something with languages, or have anecdotes or any kind of thing that can help people with who might be learning languages themselves, or might be considering to do could it be endangered languages, linguistics, or whatever. So I was never expecting to run out, just because it's not really about, like, for many times people call it a polyglot podcast. I don't think that's true. I think it's a people podcast, and the people have stories that are completely unrelated to how many languages they've learned. Because usually stories are only in one language, but for me, it's always about, what did you do with it? What have you experienced? Where have you been? What kind of interesting experiences have you made due to the languages and due to the personal growth that comes with that? And so I that's definitely not a factor in my sort of considering to wind it down. It's not a lack of guests at all, and I don't think it matters to have talk to some of the hard hitters, some of the early polyglot influences like Benny or Luca or Richard, and these people are extremely interesting, but they're also outliers in a way, so they can be very hard to relate to, which I think usually makes for kind of predictable content. So, for instance, I couldn't have this discussion with Benny on an episode because I would kind of be obliged to kind of talk about his language hacking series, about his work, what he'd been doing, because otherwise he probably wouldn't want to spend the time with me on the podcast, because he has his business to run, which is in the language industry, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'd much rather hear from people who have had interesting experiences, and they might not necessarily have a blog or a podcast or whatever. To me, that doesn't really make a difference. Sometimes some of the craziest stories I've heard were from people that I'd never heard of, and that there have been some really good episodes that have come completely out of the blue, like somebody who lived in Afghanistan. And I was like, you can live in Afghanistan? I thought it was like in a country of war. And he said, yeah, some parts of it are pretty rough, but and he learned like the local language and he talked about his experience there, and I was just fascinated, just blown away really about somebody would actually do that. So it's a people podcast for sure, but and it's not because I'm running out of interesting people to talk to. It's just merely the value. But then again, I don't know what the value of the podcast is. I can sit here and guess why people would listen to it, but unless somebody actually tells me, which I do occasionally get emails about people enjoying it for certain reasons. They tell me their stories of why something clicks with them, but I don't know. So please tell me if you're out there, the one listener who's still in here. You know what I mean.
Yeah, so everyone who's listening, please send a note to Chris and say, hey, enjoy your podcast. Please keep it going. Feel free to give him suggestions or volunteer yourself for a possible interview.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think the biggest request you will get after this is please keep doing the podcast with anyone other than Dave Prine. And I think that's really good incentive to keep it going. Just don't have me back.
There'll be a
And
petition.
yeah, exactly. Well, listen, just don't invite him back.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I appreciate the support as well. Always have and always will. And like I said, it is for the people. I wouldn't do this just for me. There's no way, because it's just too much. It's just too much effort, to be honest. To just do it if you just had personal gain from it. It's to hopefully help people who might be struggling a little bit. Maybe there's some motivational issues sometimes, or maybe you're just lacking a bit of inspiration from other people who've been through the same. So if I can keep doing that, I definitely will. But I don't know. Is it like an artist thing where you feel like if you've been doing the same thing for a long time, you kind of have to move on, or is it like a Hollywood thing? Maybe I don't know where I'm trying to get with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think some people do have to reinvent themselves just to kind of stay fresh or to keep themselves motivated and engaged with whatever they're doing. Like Rick and I, we're doing this podcast, and we've just had one out. One should come out later on today, and already I'm kind of like is this working? Is this me? Is this what I want to do? And it's fun. I mean, if in the context of just shooting the breeze with Rick, I like it, and I could end up doing this forever. But I know that if I start paying too much attention, like, oh, how many people saw the Facebook post, or how many people listened, or how many likes did I get, then it starts kind of losing its appeal.
Hmm.
And before we release the podcast, we've been doing a lollygagging YouTube channel where we do even less um, entertaining stuff. We just kind of chat back and forth through a Google Chat video and just talk about things. And it's less structured than the podcast. And you know what? It's fun. It's fun to do. It makes me happy. I only have to talk to him for an hour at the most at a time, so that makes me even happier because I hate him. But it's fun for now. And down the line, if it stops being fun or if other things interfere with life, then then it's time to pull the plug, even if we only get like 5 episodes out. But I'd like to keep it going because it makes me happy in many ways. And so as long as this keeps you happy, I mean, keep doing it. Once it's if it's a bother to do it more than once a week, do it once a week. Do it once a month if that's all you can do to make you happy. But if it stops making you happy, then then quit it and keep in touch and keep me posted on your next adventure. I mean, I would hate to see you go, but I also would hate to see you put this out, and be miserable about it. So that, I think, is ultimately really what we've come to realize, and that will be $300 for this session.
Well, yeah, it's definitely been a lot of therapy here, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I think you've made me more confused than ever. So thank you for that.
You sound like every ex-girlfriend of mine. So
Well,
at least I'm consistent.
right. No, I just think it's a really tough. It's kind of a tough thing in any case, because you're putting a lot of effort into something that is not. It's not your job. It's not your career in any way. But it's a hobby. So it is tough to do, and I think once you've done it a lot of times, like this is episode 130-ish. It just, you just wonder, is this as good as it can be? Should I be more structured? Should I edit more? Should it be more should it be more thematic? Should I bring in a guest host or a host, a co-host? Well, you just ask all these questions, and I don't know what the answer is. I just know that I do like having these conversations, so it will not be about enjoyment either. But on the same time, I don't want to just post conversations if people want meaningful content, so to speak. But again, I don't know what people want, so I guess I will just have to keep going. And if people email me and say what they want, then maybe I can do more of that.
Well, a piece of advice I got a long time ago that I was reluctant to really internalize is that someone told me, I think it was my friend Chris back in Santa Barbara. She told me that you don't have to necessarily fill a specific need. You can just do what you're doing. Do what appeals to you, and just have that be your place in the grand scheme of. At the time, I was trying to do travel writing, and and she basically said, just write the way that you want, put that out there, and you can write a blog. You don't have to have it be, you have to be at the mercy of a publisher or an editor. You can just put it out on a blog and have that be your thing. And it may not be as as the style of Pico Iyer or God, who are other travel writers? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't have to be the answer to something else. It can just be its own entity, and people can choose to like it or not like it. And I think, just if what is really fun for you is to record conversations with people, we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and I've probably given about 13 seconds worth of quality material, but that's fine. If that is what you want to do, have conversations, put them on your podcast, because no one can stop you. No one needs to stop you.
Yeah.
And if people like it, great. If they don't, then they have the responsibility to chime in and say, hey, I listened to your podcast, but I'd rather be hearing this other thing, or I'd rather hear more about language learning. I mean, if no one is giving you an indication of where to go, then just go where you want to go.
And actually, maybe that is a good indicator, because people are usually not shy to complain about things. So if I haven't gotten a lot of complaints, which actually I can't remember the last complaint I had about the podcast, then maybe everything's all right anyway.
Oh, well, you're going to get a lot of complaints.
Oh yeah, this episode I might just get banned from the platform. Too many negative reviews. This episode is a special one. No, but I do appreciate it. I think that people listening know that, yeah, the podcast is definitely talking about guests who are on here, but I am not shy to talk about what I'm up to, what I'm doing, my kind of point of view. So I hope that it's an interesting kind of breaking a wall here, talking about the podcast on the podcast. I definitely enjoyed it. It is an interesting topic. I don't know where it's going, but then again, I didn't know where it was going 4 or 5 years ago, so maybe the answer is there is no answer. You just got to do what you feel like.
Yeah. Don't let it lead you. You lead the podcast. You take it where you feel it naturally goes, and don't worry too much about where you think it should until you get until you get some feedback, and someone may say, "Hey, I want to hear more about studying Sanskrit," and and even then you can say, "You know what? That doesn't appeal to me. That doesn't make me happy." So no, I mean maybe we'll have a guest who will talk about Sanskrit, but this will not be actual Sanskrit fluency. This is actual fluency. This is what I want it to be because I'm Chris Broholm. I'm the boss.
It's
Yeah.
what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's really empowering speech you're putting on there. Thank you for that. No, thank you so much, Dave. I really enjoyed this conversation, and apologies for taking so much of your time today. It's been a little bit longer than expected, but the topic was too interesting to cut off. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and thanks for your support as always. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to go for a round next time there's something going on.
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to hearing future episodes. So get on that, and I hopefully we will have you on our podcast sometime down the line. It would be great to have you as a guest input
For
speaker.
sure, anytime,
So
anytime. I'd love to. That's the least I can do to pay back all the guests that I've tortured. I mean, had on the show for the last 4 or 5 years. I always come and join you, no problem, and I can catch up with Rick as well. So that'd be great fun.
okay, great. Yeah, maybe we'll see if he wants to come on your podcast, and we can really offend your listeners.
After
So.
this, I doubt anyone's going to come on, Dave. I'm sorry. It's just it's over. I had a good run.
Hey, it was nice knowing you, man.
It was a good run. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Well, it's great talking to you. Always a treat, and hopefully we will cross paths in person by next year's gathering, if not sooner.
I hope so. I won't be in Slovakia. No, Slovenia. I think. I don't think I'll make it there. It's a little bit out of the way of normal travel. But yeah, next year I definitely will. I have to.
Okay, great. Oh, and actually, I wanted to promote one other thing
Oh yeah.
to the
Where
listeners.
can people
Actually,
find you, and where can they send the hate mail?
oh well, you can find me at www.polyglottsanonymous.com. It's a very inactive blog, but it will be featuring podcast episodes. And if you want to write me, you can just send it to daveprine@gmail.com. But please, no offensive photos. But no, the thing I wanted to promote actually was the talk that you gave at the Polyglot Gathering in 2016. You can find it on the Polyglot YouTube channel. But it was a talk where Chris talks about what he's learned after interviewing 100 polyglots, and it was a very engaging talk. So I just basically I wanted to mention that earlier, but I invite people to check that out. I'm sure Chris will put the link in the show notes, and you'll get a glimpse of what he got out of the first was it the first year of actual fluency?
No. This was I think it was like 3 years. So it was in. You said 16.
2016, yeah.
Yeah, so I would have been at the 2014 and 2015 gatherings, so it would be the third year of the podcast.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, just check that out and see what Rick has learned, or sorry, what Chris has learned so far. Rick
Well,
has learned
one
nothing,
thing I
so.
haven't learned is how to do a presentation. I could take some notes from your book. I mean, that was rough. That was rough. I was very uncomfortable there, but that's life. Some people are good at presenting, and some people are a little bit introverted and shy like me. And I don't know what it was, but it was definitely a nerve-wracking experience to go through. Maybe I wasn't really prepared that well, but it's tough.
I thought you did great. You were well dressed. You spoke clearly and relaxed. You were not running around like a monkey doped up on caffeine like some people in this conversation their talk. And I think the one this year was probably even more hyper. But no, you did a great job. So hey everyone listening, check it out. Chris will put it in the show notes, and it'll give people a glimpse of what you got out of the first 3 years, and hopefully we can see what you'll do with the next 3 years.
Yeah, hopefully.
Wink, 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 wink. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dave. Talk to you soon.
All right, great talking to you, buddy. Have a
All right.
great enjoy Suits.
Have you seen it all?
No, I have seen none of it.
Oh, right. You should definitely start watching it. Oh, or maybe I don't. Depends if you want to have a life for a while. But it's a
Yeah,
great show.
yeah. Well, I better not try and watch it if I move to Belgium.
Right. Yeah, you can't watch it there. It's blocked. Geo blocked. So good luck.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Have a great night. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm really happy that you made it to the end. Actually, a lot of people don't listen to the full podcast episodes. So the fact that you listen to this makes me really happy and excited. Unless you've fallen asleep with the headphones in, of course, then I don't know how much credit I can give you, but I really appreciate you listening and subscribing. And if you leave a review or a comment, I'd be over the moon. One last thing, I just wanted to again thank Kloska, the show sponsor. I'm not sure the season would be. I don't think these episodes would even get made if it wasn't for Kloska, because it's just a real, it's just a real pleasure to have such a big player in the language learning community to support what I do, and not just financially, which obviously also helps, but also emotionally and mentally, seeing that there are some people that believe in what I do. And of course, I get that from the fans and the listeners as well. So I just want to thank them as well. If you haven't tried it out yet, I would highly recommend it because they have a free trial available. And if you don't like it, don't buy it. It's all the features are unlocked. There's a limited number of repetitions, they call them. You can try, and if you like it, it's a monthly subscription for all the languages. And let me know what you think. So thank you once again. Have a fantastic day.